This is the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with my trusty engineer, Rob Barretts. How you doing, Rob? Everything going okay? Rob, working the magic behind the glass. We have a great show tonight. Another group of authors ready to tell you how they got it together and what inspired them to get it together to write a book, or in some cases, publish the book of a loved one. And we've had several authors do this, publish the book of someone in their family. And in the case of Christopher Platt, his dad was already a published author with a following when he died. And he has a very interesting story of what compelled him to publish Sinbad and Me. And we do spend quite a bit of time with him tonight, but I think it's important, especially for people who have never written before, to become familiar with people who have been successful. Read what they've written, get an idea of what great writing is. And I think, Rob, you'll agree with this, right? That the more you read well-written books, the better the writer you're going to be. Christopher's dad, Ken, wrote Sinbad and Me in 1966. It was one in a series of books about a young boy named Steve. And like the first book, it was very well received. And he even won an award, right, Christopher?
He won an Edgar Award, which is from the Mystery Writers of America, for young adult title. And the book became a cult classic, and it's been around now for, 50 years. And you look on eBay to try and find old copies of it, and there are hundreds and hundreds of dollars for these things. And again, it's about a boy and his dog. The boy is named Steve still. His dog is Sinbad, an English bulldog, and the bulldog is quite a character. He doesn't do anything supernatural. He just acts like a dog. Unlike everything you read today in the young adult sphere, let's see, there's no explosions, there's no sex, there's no huge presence of supernatural beings. There's no vampires. There's no zombies. There's no special effects or sci-fi elements in this book at all. And despite that, it's a really good yarn. It's a book about a kid who lives in a village on the North Shore of Long Island. His parents go away for a while, and he's left in town on his own desert. And he's a teenager, and back in the day, you could do that. And Steve gets into the whole thing with mysterious people. There's an old woman who has a candy shop up on the hill on the corner from his house. There are gambling ships from the 50s, missing criminals who had old clapboard castle mansions that are kind of haunted, but maybe not. It's just a great mystery. Kids can learn all about a lot of things in this book that normally wouldn't be approached in a young adult novel, which was one of the things that made it so unique. I have to say, though, that I'm kind of partial to it because he based Steve, the character, sort of loosely on me, a taller, skinnier me, but still me. Sinbad is based on my English bulldog, a dog named Romeo, and we had our adventures together, nothing quite as literary as what's in Sinbad. And all the characters in the book are adaptations, I guess, of people that we knew. The little old lady on the hill. There really was a little old lady on the hill who had a candy store. The sheriff, the chief of police, really existed. I think his name was very close to what we have in the book. And I used to hang out with his daughter because they had a swimming pool, and in the summer it was a lot of fun to go over there. In the back of the police station, they had a swimming pool. And everybody knew everybody. It was a very small town. And I grew up in Great Neck, and the town is basically an artistic licensed version of Great Neck out on Long Island.
Well, you said this became a cult classic, and you can get copies of it on eBay.
Yeah.
For hundreds of dollars.
Right.
So you went to Page Publishing and decided, you know what, I'm going to get this book published so that people don't have to pay hundreds of dollars to read it?
Well, that was my decision. What happened was my father died in 2003, and he didn't leave us much by way of an inheritance. What he left were his books. So my cousin and I, who were his sole heirs, decided, well, maybe we'll form a little company and see if we can get some of these books republished. And that's what we've been doing for the last 12 years. And always wanted to do Sinbad, because Sinbad was his one crowning achievement in terms of recognition he got, as I said, the Edgar Award for it. And it became something that we've been trying to do for, well, like 12 years. We've published a lot of his other books on ebook versions, and they've gone nowhere because ebook, there's a million of them, and you get no royalties. So nobody hears about them, and we don't make any money on them anyway. So we had a book published, his one and only historical novel we had published by Farrar Straus in 2005. And that's kind of when everything, well, we started in 2005. It finally came out in 2008 and went thud about the same time as The Economy did. They kicked it out. And that was the end of that. And so I think we sold 1,600 copies of his only historical novel, and it was just a brilliant book. And then we said, all right, we have to do Sinbad. The problem with publishing Sinbad from a publisher's standpoint is we had no provenance. We had no record of the copyright ever reverting to him, although it was published in 1966, because the agent that he had at the time had long since died. He had no paper trail in his belongings, what he'd left over after he died, and we searched fairly diligently. His books and papers are in a collection at Boston University. They didn't have anything. The company that published the book had disappeared. Had been bought by a couple of companies, bought by another company, bought by a third company, and then dissolved. And I tracked down all the various pieces of it, could never find anything indicated that the copyright had been reverted to him. But of course, it had to have been because it was a limited, number of years before those things happened. So finally, so a number of publishers we approached wouldn't touch it because we couldn't prove we had the rights to it. Finally, I said, all right, let's find another publisher. Found Page Publishing. My cousin found Page. And since I wrote an afterword for the book and had a different cover assigned to it, that made it a new book for the Library of Congress's purposes and copyright purposes. So we were able to publish the book through Page Publishing.
Now it's promotion time.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, and it's an interesting road to work with Page, because I've worked with this kind of company before. I've always worked with traditional publishers who supposedly pay you an advance up front, and then you work off that as the royalties come in. But then, the way they've been working, the royalties haven't come in because they don't promote anymore because, well, I'm not a blockbuster publisher, and it's kind of an archaic book. So it's been a very interesting adventure. And in the afterword for the book, I was talking about what a challenge it was to get this book going, and I said maybe one day I'll write a book of my own, and I'll call it Sinbad and the Lawyers. It's an interesting challenge because I set up a Facebook page. I've been keeping track for years now with his fans. And so there's a Ken Platt Facebook page, which I created. There's a Wikipedia entry, which I worked on with some fans. There's a Sinbad and Me page, which I have nothing to do with except I contribute to it now and then, which was created by fans of Sinbad and Me. There's another Facebook page and website for something called the Three Investigators books. These were a series of ghost-written Alfred Hitchcock mysteries, of which my father did 3. And so the guy who runs that page knows the real-life author of every one of those Hitchcock books, and he had a whole page devoted to my father's 3 books. And so he and I have kept in touch, and every time something happens with any of the Ken Platt books, he announces that on his stuff, on his page and his Facebook page. And Sinbad and Me has been going crazy. And when I announced that the book was coming out in hardback, paperback, and ebook form, my little universe of diehard fans went nuts because most of them are my age, which is pretty old. And we wanted to give the book to our kids so they could have the same experience as teenagers that we had reading it when it first came out.
Well, I think more teenagers might be interested in this than you might think. And certainly people who remember your dad are going to be excited to hear that this book is out and part of a trilogy. So there's more Sinbad books on the way. Thank you so much, Christopher. What a nice tribute to your dad. And by the way, if you want to find out more about this book and about this author, just Google Ken as in K-I-N. It's more like Kin. K-I-N Platt, which I did. And you will find out all kinds of information about this truly fascinating author. All right, Amy Mosbacher writes for a church newsletter in her free time, and one of the local priests kept telling her, you should put your writings together, you should do a book, and finally, that's what she did. Her book's entitled Through the Seasons with Jesus and Mary.
It is a walk through the liturgical year of the calendar, the church calendar, starting with Advent, going all the way through November and the Feast of Christ the King. And it tells the love story between God and people. And it starts with Jesus and Mary and Joseph. And part of the story looks at Jesus' life through, their contemporary eyes and not knowing who he is and the wonder that goes along with him. And then I put in reflections from our point of view on just reflections on his gospel message, on how to live that message, or at least how I am trying to live that message, in our life, in our time. My hope is that it will make people look at their lives maybe a little differently and say, yeah, I never thought about that before, and this is how Jesus fits in. Just opening their eyes to the spiritual possibilities that God exists, and he's real, and he wants to interact with us, and he loves us. I do include experiences of my own home and family life, experiences I've had where I can draw what I will call my lessons in how to learn to love God better. And if other people can relate to those experiences, then that will help them. And I wasn't serious about working on it hard at first. I would just kind of play around with, what kind of order do I want to put these in? And I finally, put them in the order of the year. And I wrote in the parts of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and I filled in some other blank spots just to make it complete, the complete year. And then I just said, wow, I've actually got a manuscript here. And I started sending it off to different publishers and got an awful lot of rejection notices, and Paige called me up one day and I was ready to have them say, I'm sorry, you don't fit our, needs at this time. And instead they said, well, we really like your manuscript and we'd like to publish it. So that floored me. I'm like, wow, this is great. I've already had one book signing. I definitely have it published or, printed in all of the diocesan, newsletters, church bulletins. I put posters and signs up around town. My family's all spread out, so I've got places across the country, Illinois, stuff like this, that they are advertising for me as well. So I'm hoping that we can get the word out that, this book is out there, and it's not terribly expensive, and I would love people just to crack it open and just explore and read it with an open mind and see if they can find their part in what God has in store for us. So, yeah.
How'd your book signing go?
It went very well. We sold out of all the books that we had there. It was at my local parish in Meadville, but I had advertised it to all the parishes around because I honestly didn't know where else to start. You have to start at the beginning with what I know, and then I guess it just grows from there. And I have had a couple of speaking engagements prior to this where they said, come tell us, kind of what's in your book. So I did. I included different passages from the book when I was speaking to these groups.
Great job, Amy. And I hate to say it, you're going to get sick of hearing me say it. She went right back to her community, to her diocese. That's where she set up her book signing, and you just heard she sold out. Granted, it helps when you're writing religious books. It's a huge market. It's very targeted, and, you're talking to like-minded people, so I get that. That makes it, I would say a little easier, but I just can't emphasize enough the importance of promoting your book right where you are. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and I mean quick. Come right back. Do not go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Hey, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it. Look who came back, Rob. Isn't that nice? I love it. Before the break, we were talking about a woman who's hoping that through her book that the reader will come to know the importance of a supreme being in their life, whoever that might be. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that through our next author, DJ Blatchford. She's an Eskimo living up in Alaska, and she believes in miracles, not only because she suffered amnesia in an accident and then somehow remembered the story she wrote in her book, but because of what happened one day in Bible study. Tell us what happened, DJ.
I felt something say, "You're going to write a book?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to write a book. I'm done, I'm spent, I'm burnt." And they're not successful anyway, so I don't have the funds for it. And so then we're into the Bible study, and my pastor walks in, and she looks at me, and she says, "So DJ, so you're going to write a book?" And I kind of looked at her and laughed and said, "Yeah, I guess so." I wrote the book after I was a pastor's assistant and staying at their home.
She just came out of nowhere and said, "You're going to write a book?"
Yep. And then we wrote the book and we edited it, and after we got it edited, it didn't have a title. And I looked at her, it was about 11 o'clock at night when we did our final edit, and I said, "Do you realize this is the first book I've written and I don't have a title for it?" She's like, "Oh." So went to bed, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, she's screaming, "DJ, DJ!" And I ran out of my room and I said, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And she said, "Does God yell at you very often?" And I said, "Oh, once in a while. Not really, but I guess so. Why?" She said, "Well, he woke me up." And I sat straight up and he yelled at me and said, "Tell her the title of the book is The Rose of Sharon." And I was like, wow, I guess it has God's thumbprint on it then, doesn't it? It's actually miracle to miracle. I started remembering some of the stories that I've come across from friends and family throughout my life of things that happened to them that had no real answer as to how it could have been answered, but it was, and they knew it was God because there couldn't have been any other answer. So some of it is in struggling times, and some of it's in abusive times. They should have not survived it, but they did. And then a couple stories dedicated to my children's dad, because he survived the Great Depression, and he's gone home. But I remembered those stories, and I wanted to pass them on to my family, my children. And by the way, the Rose of Sharon, you can find it in the Song of Solomon 2, verse 1, and the verse says, "I am the Rose of Sharon and the lily of the valley."
Okay.
And it's true stories that have happened that where people knew that, wow, I should have lived through that, or wow, I'm alive because of what? And it makes them stop and think there is a God and there is angels and there is protection. And it makes them understand that they are important in life, and if they weren't, then miracle things like that wouldn't happen to them. On the cover is a white dove, which is, of course, a symbol of the Holy Spirit holding a silver rose. And in the very background of it's a picture of the Aurora Borealis in Alaska. And most of these stories were told to me in Alaska. My original people are from Barrow, and part of them were whale hunters, and they migrated south towards White Mountain in Nome, Alaska. And Nome is where we kind of settled on the beach for a while. And I hope that people like reading about miracles.
I am sure there are people who want to read about miracles, DJ. Thanks so much for sharing your story. The Rose of Sharon. It's, one way to explain the unexplainable. Aaron Olson was always curious about the way we think about Lucifer, the ultimate evil, the devil. And he decided to do some research, and he's made some very interesting discoveries that he writes about in his book, The Truth of Lucifer. I don't know, Aaron, that title's a little scary.
Well, the truth is Lucifer, the spirit that the world knows as Lucifer, is a bunch of folklore, and, there really nobody knows who Lucifer is. It's based off of one account in the Bible where the name is mentioned, and people have taken that to be a fallen angel that tries to rebel against God and whatnot. They've got the spirit Satan and, claim that Lucifer is the ultimate evil and wants to destroy humanity and everything like that. And so I did a bunch of research along with, I was going through kind of a spiritual awakening myself and everything, and just looking at these stories and how they've come to be and come to pass, and found that they're really based off of nothing. A few accounts that have been interpreted one way, and throughout history, it's just kind of built upon itself with who Lucifer is. So it's really kind of look at how humanity has made a monster out of a spirit that they know nothing about. So
we have a bad habit of doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely humanity has a very bad habit of, they like to make an enemy out of a person or something rather than get to understand it and figure out what that being or entity might be. So that's one of the things that I kind of go into detail about, because there's there are other religions that talk about, destructive forces, evil entities, and this and that throughout history. So I kind of view Lucifer as the epitome of evil based off of what people have taught throughout history. And I kind of take a step back and look at it from the perspective of, well, why is this? Why is Lucifer considered evil? On what basis do we have for this? And what I found is it's really baseless. It's people using Lucifer as a scapegoat for their own purposes to behave badly,
Yeah, we all need that, don't you think?
I find that it's better to take responsibility for your actions rather than blame another entity or person or blame it on something else. Since we all have free will, we all have choices to make. So it whether or not you were given a choice, to behave badly or behave righteously, it isn't another person's responsibility. It's ultimately your responsibility for the choice that you make. So blaming another soul, another person, another entity for it or whatever is a way to not take responsibility for your actions. And I find the majority of people do that in life.
Yep, it's a lot easier. Just, the devil made me do it. I couldn't help myself.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that.
It's definitely a big point of it is to make people look inwards and to help them find themselves and help them be at peace with themselves. As I was going through my spiritual journey, that was one thing that I had to look at with myself was, choices that I've made in my life that have led me to this point that I'm at now. and looking at it and, seeing people that I might have blamed in the past for something, like leaving a job because I didn't enjoy working with somebody, or, making a mistake and blaming someone else. Looking at it from that point of view and looking at my participation in it really helped me reflect on the choices that I made in whatever was going on.
So the truth of Lucifer is the devil doesn't make you do it, right? You do. You have free will, and we have to take responsibility for our actions. I hear you, Aaron. Okay, imagine a Lucifer that sucks the life out of people. Yes, Anita Atkins came up with this one in her book, The Seeker of Souls.
It's about a young girl who named Kiki Malone, who didn't know her destiny on Earth when her father sent her to Earth to collect souls. So when she made it here, she didn't know what she was there for, or she didn't know her name or anything. So she named herself Night. And at night she get hungry and she wonder why. So when she sucked people's souls.
She sucked up their souls.
Yes.
She's evil.
But she had no idea who she was, so she got to grow into the person that she is and find out who she is and what she was there for.
So she had to go on a journey. She had to figure it out.
Yeah. It's just something me and my mom came up with.
You came up with an idea about a woman who sucks up people's souls.
Yeah.
Does she figure it out? Does she become a good person?
She figured it out, and yeah, she does be a good person.
What's your message?
I guess you could say that you don't know people. When you see them, they look like the same people we are, but a lot of people are different. Underneath, there are different people.
So basically, don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So are people reading your book?
Well, I know a lot of people that I know have about one. We have Facebook and Twitter and all that. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I think I just got one or two, and then like my people that know me that about the book, they'll call me instead of I keep telling them to put a review on the page and let people know, but they'll call me and tell me how good it is.
Okay.
But I think it's like one or two people that put a review on there.
Was this a good experience for you, right? Getting a book written, getting it published?
Yes, it's been a big experience.
It's a lot of work, right?
It is.
You gonna write? You gonna keep writing?
Yes. Well, I have one working on one now. It's about my mom. It's a life about my mom.
All right, Anita. Thanks so much. Good luck. We are just about out of time. Thank you so much for stopping by to hang out with us on the Page Publishing Book Club. We're going to be back next week. Same time, same place, 710 WOR. I'm going to be here. Rob's going to be here. And we're going to have another whole new crop of authors who are going to talk to you about how they did what they did and how you can do it too. Do me a favor. In the meantime, could you start writing?